Hello and welcome to the Raw Fork podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Marina Buksov, and I'm a functional medicine pharmacist in New York, as well as an integrative health coach and clinical herbalist. I'm pleased to go into season 3 of this podcast and continue to bring on other holistic minded pharmacists, as well as healthcare professionals to the show. I'm constantly inspired by my guests and their stories and love sharing their points of view with you all. Hello. Welcome to another episode. I am super excited to dive deep today with Robert Kress. He's a functional pharmacist, among many other things, which I'm sure we'll get to talk about in the episode. So without further ado, why don't you just introduce yourself and tell us where you come from, where you grew up, how you got this title of functional pharmacist.
Sure, absolutely. And it's nice to meet you. And thank you for having me on, Marina. So I have always been kind of a different pharmacist from the get-go. I graduated pharmacy school back in '94, Temple University. I'm from the Philadelphia area originally. And the reason I kind of got into pharmacy was the ease of traveling to different places and be able to have a job. Like it never was I guess you could say a true passion at first, but it had those certain advantages, some job security and stuff like that. Although natural health and nature has always been a big part of my life. I've always liked to spend most time outdoors, hiking, whatever it might be. So as I was going through pharmacy school, I kind of realized, wow, we're not really learning anything about natural medicine, nutrition, or anything. So once I graduated, I took East-West Herb course. It was from Michael and Leslie Tierra out in California, and that was kind of my first inception into it. And what they did is they covered kind of the core areas of Ayurvedic, Native American, folk medicine, as well as traditional Chinese medicine. So, I lived in this little town called Doylestown. So I started doing my own concoctions in my kitchen while I'm working at a kind of a big chain pharmacy at the time. So there was a kind of a complete dichotomy within my existence. And then, as many people probably know, in the practice of a retail pharmacy, how things get busier. In the mid 90s, it was kind of the growth of online status, quick adjudication, polypharmacy, treating side effects with more medication. And I quickly got disenchanted with it. So I thought it was a symptom of the area I was living in. So I headed west. Long story short, ended up in Jackson, Wyoming. So I spent a lot of my time. So what I was running away from quickly caught up for me. I thought I was going to be living in this sleepy little, healthy ski town where no one really needed meds except for emergencies, and nature would cure all. But it caught up to me. So I always was searching for a root cause to everything. So I started. I guess so you could say I continued my exploration, and I went into Reiki. So I got certified Reiki 1, Reiki 2. I further went into more mind-body medicine, which is one of my favorite areas to get into. Teachers like John Sarno, Candace Pertz, and all that. So it just kept evolving. In '95, I told myself I'd be at a pharmacy by the year 2000. I just didn't think it was for me, although I didn't know what type of pharmacy was out there. So fortunately, at that time, I had a student that was an intern for me, and she went back to school. And she told me about compounding, and she did an internship from the University of Wyoming down at PCCA. I'm like, well, that kind of sounds cool. You can kind of have your own pharmacy and, figure it out that way. So long story short, sold the house in Jackson Hole, ended up in Asheville, North Carolina, ran into some couple guys that owned a pretty cool pharmacy. That I'm like, well, this makes sense. Ended up in Southwest Michigan, and I put together basically my own nutritional pharmacy, which turned into really a longevity clinic. I had physicians working for me, whether they're doing functional medicine practice, massage therapy, skincare, and everything like that. I ran my own nutritional practice out of there. I became a board certified clinical nutritionist, certified in Quantum Reflex Analysis, which is applied kinesiology, which was a really big sticking point for me on how I was able to see how the body works together. We're not isolated. It's kind of like, okay, you might go to a specialist, but it's nice to have an overseer to put everything together. So I started to understand how the body worked, applying nutrition that way, continue applying the mind body medicine that way. I was doing auricular acupuncture, which is acupuncture of the ears. So kind of my growth continued. As of recently, I've gotten more into the physical realm of things. I'm a yoga instructor, certified in that last year, Primal Health Coach as well. So long story short, all of that time, now I find myself in teaching a lot. So I'm still working with clinically with patients one-on-one. I do like to kind of dabble into pharmacy still, to do kind of a PRN thing to keep uh, my brain in the game, I guess you can say. Although I'm teaching a lot of functional pharmacy, which is essentially the advent of lifestyle medicine and functional medicine that comes together. Because as you know, we as pharmacists, we sit in a very unique place in healthcare. So that's me, and that's where I am.
Wow, wow, wow. I don't know where to start. That was like a lot.
Yeah,
Lot
I'm an
of
old man. There's been a lot done.
yeah, training, certifications, moving around, trying to find a sweet spot. So, what exactly bothered you about traditional pharmacy that made you seek out all these alternative modalities?
It was very myopic, and it was not getting to the root cause. So it was basically quieting symptoms. And when we look, a symptom it's a message from within. It's like, hey, you need to look at this. So, it's almost like if you have a child and a child's screaming, well, the child is trying to send you a message. If you just say shut up and keep it down, you're really not addressing the issue to find out what's going on. And that's what's happening with our bodies. And if we continue to suppress, then the issue will continue to grow. So that was the biggest thing. And the lack of patient care, I mean, as we've seen medicine evolve, I guess, in that direction, less patient interaction, less patient time. And the research and study shows that whether you're a physician, whether you're primary practitioner, or even a pharmacist, one of the challenges or the things that we don't like about our practice is that a lot of people really don't find they're doing what they thought they got in to do. You know, so insurance adjudications, all that stuff, how we spend our time that way. So, but the biggest thing was not getting to the root.
Yeah. Well, a lot of us also get into this from personal issues, personal health journeys or family patient advocacy. Do you have a story like that?
No, that's a really great point, and actually, I do. And the funny thing is, it's like I never realized I did. Um, I come from a family of bad backs, right? So we are
Mhm.
we are products of our conditioning, and this was my introduction of mind body medicine. Actually, not even the natural side of things. So I have a sister that has had 3 spinal fusions. Um, I grew up seeing my mom, on her back for a while. She never had surgery. She'd get up and go. She'd do it. My father had lower back surgery. So, I was conditioned to that response. And then as I was growing up, I was very active, playing soccer or whatever. Then suddenly it's like randomly lower back spasms. So I'm like, oh, well, it must be a genetic thing. Although this is before I even understood epigenetics, or I really understood how subconscious stressors can actually have an impact, into our health, into our life. So when I got out to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, when I lived there, I was seeing a chiropractor, and it was very interesting. He x-rayed me.
Mhm.
So you could see the degenerations all up and down my spine. So that kind of gave me proof that I was looking for, like, oh, I must really have a bad back. When truth is, most people walking around have degenerations up and down their spine. My neck is like really racked, but I don't have any issues there. But why the lower back? So I started on this rehab, and it fast became what I like to call an identity of illness. I hooked onto it, and then I would find other people that were doing the same things. We were in a very active town, snowboarding a lot. And if I had a friend that had the same issues, it's like, oh wow, like namaste, we've got the same thing here. My lower back recognizes yours. So so what happened was, I remember when I used to drive to pharmacy school, Howard Stern, the radio guy, I used to listen to him going down, and I remember him saying, this guy John Sarno cured my back. So I searched it out, went to a bookstore, we had them then, and I got a couple of his books, Mind Body Prescription, Healing Back Pain. Really like Mind Body Prescription, and I continued to understand his work. And the one main part was, when you recognize that there is a psychosomatic issue, something that is underlying, when you just realize it, you don't have to believe it, but realizing it's a possibility, you can almost find instant relief. And essentially, the way he teaches it is something called tension myositis syndrome, that the subconscious may recognize something within the conscious realm that seems threatening.
Mm.
In our conscious realm, it might not be a big deal, but what the subconscious will do will be divert attention, and does that by attributing a lack of oxygen and blood flow to a certain area and
Mm.
induce pain. So I was like, whoa, it was like one of those aha moments. So I actually immediately started to find relief that way. Well, this was actually after, I'm sorry, fast go back. So I went on this treadmill of training, rehabbing, working with my back. Then I went to see an osteopath, orthopedic surgeon in Jackson Hole, and they had the best of the best. So it's like, oh, I'm seeing the best back surgeon, yada yada yada. Went in for back surgery in 1998. It was a great snow year. I was kind of kicking myself because I missed about 6 weeks on my snowboard, but then I was back at it quicker than my doc wanted me to, and everything was fine. I didn't have an ounce of pain or anything like that.
Wow.
Went down to Costa Rica for about 2 weeks, beat my back up royally, surfing, driving 8-10 hours from the coast to the mountains, throwing luggage, whatever it was. We were very active then. And on that trip, not an ounce of pain. Came back to the pharmacy that I was managing, that I let run on autopilot for 2 weeks. Right when I walked in, pain right down my leg, sciatica dropped me to my knees. So I
Wow.
was like, and that's what reminded me of the Howard Stern thing. John Sarno, I'm like, there is something here. So
Okay.
then I further went down through like Louise Hay, if you've ever heard of her.
Yeah.
She's done information like linking like what emotions, how they trigger and what they mean to our physical body. And I started recognizing certain control issues, and that was my path. And yeah, so that was kind of the key thing that did it for me.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah, it's kind of neat. And now my back doesn't bother me. And if it does, I just have to step back, stop, and think, okay, what's going on here? And and the awareness is a very it's a big thing.
Yeah. So tapping into our body and actually listening can tell us a lot about the subconscious and what's going on, and what we don't sometimes don't even realize is a problem for us in our life, that we can, by changing something that's going on in our life, by changing our situation, we can actually affect our body
Yep,
and get to that root cause.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And
that's
I think the beauty of that, it goes both ways too. So as we stay physically healthy, that actually helps our mental, emotional side as well. So you know, it's kind of a goes both ways. It's kind of
yeah,
neat.
it's a
Yeah,
two-way street for sure. When
absolutely.
if you think about it, there's always been kind of a disconnect and a duality between studying the mind versus studying the body, the physiology, all the scientific biological processes that are going on. And then that's
Yep.
always been kind of separate from like studying what's going on with the mind, back to like Descartes, I think, therefore I am, or,
Yeah.
but what is it really is just like one organism, and you can't separate the two work together, and it's mind and body working together all the time, and just expressing each other's health, and they're a reflection and a mirror of each other.
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's exactly it. Yep. And it was interesting because it was around was it like in the mid 50s, through a lot of the this psychiatric texts and stuff like that. They essentially took psychosomatic out of it through the medical text. So, and that was a big, as you use the word, disconnect, and that happened. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think right now we're at this stage where we finally are integrating, and practices like yoga really exemplify how they can work together. It's not just in physical activity, and it's not just meditation. It's a flow of one into the other
Yep.
constantly.
It's both and. Yep.
Yeah. So, what have you found to be kind of like your favorite part of the journey, or what taught you the most, and how you want to live your life and how you want to serve your patients?
That's a great question. um, I think the biggest thing is simplifying life, simplifying things, and getting back to how we were designed. You know, if we look back 100, we have the same genetic blueprint we had 160,000 years ago, but we were living a completely different life. And life is moving, or seems to be moving, so much faster now. And I think part of that is the advent of technology, and it's the advent of our lifestyle, which is much more indoors now than it was 10, 20, 30 years ago. There's a global, obviously, movement for health and wellness and getting back outside. Although for me, it really is the power of nature, and it's where everything stems from nature, because that's we are beings that walk on this planet, and we are of this planet, and we are influenced, just like I said, it's our conditioning. So you can be in a household conditioned by anger, fear, happiness, joy, certain health issues, or you can just let nature do the talking, and or once again, both ends. So I really think it's the simplicity and just the bare bones of, let's just start where we came from and then build on that.
Yeah, I love that. That's a great answer. And actually, I just find myself also telling my clients, just as a common theme, no matter what they're going through, just like simplify your life, take time out to just be joyful, be in a state of joy, do those things that bring you joy, and really dedicate some time out of your life for that,
Yeah.
and it's just like, the backbone of everything. Like, why are we here? We're here to be beings of nature and to have joy in our life, and yes, we're going to have pain, but I think the whole point is to find a purpose in that pain and overcome it, and then still find our love and our joy from that.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And what that reminded me, or actually kind of keyed in as well, there's certain lifestyle issues a lot of us forego when we went from children to adulthood. There's a power of play that we should not give up just because we're adults. Creativity, the benefits that come from both creativity and play are just congruent to each other, whether it's critical thinking, whether it's positive emotion. So it's incorporating this stuff into our life. So, and they're the easiest things we often, put to the wayside.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people also don't think of themselves as creative unless they're in a creative field professionally. Like, they think only
Good point.
artists or producers or fashion designers get to be creative, but because
Right.
they're like in a completely different field, they are not creative. They don't have what it takes. They can't let their mind like go, from left brain to right brain. And I think if we find different activities, it doesn't have to be exactly what, the exact definition of creative is. It could be the way you walk to your job, that
Yep.
morning, or you drive a different way, or the way you try a different recipe to cook with. It doesn't have to be that rigid standard to consider yourself creative or not. It's just finding those different activities that make you feel like you're doing something different and exciting and innovative.
That's an excellent point. We get stuck in this like identification of the right left brain paradigm.
Mhm.
And it's that we create every day, whether we realize it or not. I mean, we're creating constantly. So you're right. It doesn't have to be painting a Monet or anything like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think a lot of us just don't even, like you said, value that power of play. And we
Mhm.
say we have to be productive, we have to like be this and that all the time in this box, but we don't think about ways to kind of get out of that box. And we don't know how good it will feel once we're out of the box, because we just don't allow ourselves to go there.
Yep, exactly. And play can be part of certain things like exercise. Like if someone if say on a daily basis they go to the gym every morning and they hate it, it's just they do it because they think they should or they like the results. That in itself is a negative stress response in the body. But when you can incorporate, just for instance, play into exercise, you can have profound benefits that way. So you get the movement, you get the exercise, you get the non-sedentary nature, but then you also get the positive emotional uphold from that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want to go back to what you said about being one with nature. I
Mhm.
think, like you said, we do have this kind of removed relationship from nature a lot of times, that humans are kind of different, or we're on top of the food chain, and like we get to actually design ways that we can have nature work for us or work around nature and things like that. And it's true that our innovation and mental capacity has allowed us to kind of be more malleable and do certain things, but until we find that real connection, like instead of the mind body dichotomy, instead of the man versus nature dichotomy, if we actually just accept that we are nature and nature is us, and we get to live together and thrive together, we can't thrive unless the other one thrives. We both have to thrive in order
Yep.
for us to be healthy. Like I'm trying to get my clients healthy, but but also we all are a collective species, and almost like bees with a hive mind. And in order for us to have personal health, we also have to kind of take our place in this grander scheme and care for nature and just recognize that we're part of it.
Absolutely. What's the saying? A rising tide lifts all ships. It will. Yep.
Yeah.
It's perfect. Yeah.
So I also want to kind of explore what you were saying about how you built your own like pharmacy that was so innovative and had all this functional practitioners coming through. How did you build that from the ground up? Or I think it was a partnership of people.
Yeah. So I've always kind of done this build it and they will come thing, and I don't recommend it. It's not the smartest thing, although I often like to find myself just going with what comes my way. And I'm actually in the middle of one of those episodes of my life right now, and it's an exciting thing. So with the pharmacy, basically, I knew what I wanted. I knew the end result, and I so I kind of modeled what the end result would be, not really planning out how to get there, although everything fell in line. So basically, I put together a pharmacy in the high rent district of a very conservative Midwest town. So my pharmacy was right down from the beach. Funny enough, when I was a kid, so we had a friend of the family that owned a pharmacy, and I always imagined my pharmacy being close to the water and by the marina. So it's really weird how things imprint in the brain. Literally right down the road was a marina.
Nice.
I could walk to the beach on break, or if I was to choose to take some. So basically, worked with some people, put the pharmacy together. As I said, I became a member of PCCA, so compounding was the thing. I put a sign up that said nutritional pharmacy, and I started going through the CCN courses. One of the things that came out to me from that was, the component of practice. We're all in practice, so we're building and we're learning as we move along. So a lot of people, and as you see practitioners, as they start to learn, they never feel like they're ready enough, but there has to be some type of, and we want to get them to that point, but there has to be some element of, let's just roll up my sleeves and let's see what comes my way. So put a compounded pharmacy in there. We put like a beautiful tea room. This is back in 2004, so it was like old school high-end teas from the Orient through Asia. Had a couple practitioner rooms. So I built it and I was new to the area, so I didn't have any connections with people around here, but I'm like, they'll show up. So what happened was that student told me she had Dr. Pamela Smith for the Teton Festival out in Jackson Hole. Pam Smith has been really one of the leaders in anti-aging and functional medicine. And she's like, she loves pharmacists. She'll, and so I called her up. So actually I emailed Pam and she's like, I'd love to come speak for you. And she does so much for the compounding pharmacist and the quality of it. And she really is an amazing individual, and she's brilliant, and she can convey the message well as also. So basically that's what kicked things off. So new to this community, not even a year, basically in my pharmacy, I had 70 people in there. It was just packed wall to wall with Pam Smith talking. So that's what started to get the ball rolling. Now, what happened was there was no practitioners in this town that knew anything about bioidentical hormones, that could not write, that were almost refusal to write, very conservative, as I mentioned. Now, what Pam does is she actually trains physicians. And then at the time, I don't think she's doing it anymore, I'm not sure, they would have like satellite clinics of her practice, basically. So immediately she put one in my practice. So that helped a lot. at the same time, I had massage therapists that would come out and he would rent a room. And then, we would just be creative. It's like, do you want to pay me monthly? Do you want to pay me percentage? I had a couple other docs that were conventional docs down the way. They were internists that want to start getting into skincare. So I had a room for them. So I had a lot of things going at once, started my own nutritional practice. So it literally was, I don't advise build it and they will come, but that's what it was.
So
So,
you,
and then, oh, I'm sorry, real quick.
you
This is a this is a patient-driven movement. So even though I was in an area where the practitioners really weren't buying it, um, I started to speak more, offer more speaking engagements. I wrote a lot in the local paper. So I kind of build this with my studying and my practice, this obvious expert status. So then there was this mutual respect that gained from this kind of rebel pharmacist per se over here and the rest of the community, because it's the patients that really said, you know what, we want this, we want more of it, please listen. So.
awesome, awesome. So I totally agree with you about, the fear that you just don't know enough. You want to help your patients, but you just don't know, you have to get the next degree and like the
Yep.
next thing and help them in a better way and serve them in the best way. And until you know everything, you can't start. But it's like you already know so much more than they know through what you have already undergone in your training. So you could already be helping them in some way, in some capacity, even if
That's a
it's
great
not,
point.
the top most expert level that you aspire to be. You could still provide a service rather than withholding a service.
Yeah, and I love that you're withholding. You're basically withholding something that could benefit them from them because of your own fears and your own ego. Yeah,
Yeah.
great point.
So how did the whole pharmacy work? So you basically compounded, and how did the nutrition aspect of it work? How did you get your training, and how did you counsel patients? How did you get into the drug nutrient depletions?
Sure. So, fortunately, when I went through my CCN through the CNCB, I started with level like the third module, and it was Jim Lavelle that started. And if you've ever, been in a room with Jim, he's very passionate about what he teaches. And I'm like, this is what I want. So it was from the guys in Asheville. I saw what they were doing, but then the keto aspect of that one-on-one clinical stuff. I mean, I walked away so gigged. If you've ever been to one, it's like after that weekend, I was like, yes, and that was it. The other, modules were great, but they certainly weren't to this level of what hooked me. So, I started to see, okay, I'm kind of getting gigged on the whole nutrition thing, seeing the research, seeing the studies. I always like to bring that food to pharmacy approach. So I did start seeing people one-on-one on a general, okay, health history thing. Let's sit down and let's dig in. Then what really like the next thing that got me was when I fell into when I found out about Premier Research Laboratories, and that was Dr. Bob Marshall at the time. He's since passed, but the company's still there. But they teach a form of kinesiology or muscle testing called Quantum Reflex Analysis. They were a whole food line. And when I started, and I actually found out about them through Jim, but when I came across them and the stuff they were doing, I'm like, oh my God, I found my hippie nutritional pharmacy outlet here. This is what I was looking for. So it was that muscle testing that just switched my practice around completely. So that was like the next evolution. So, and it was really neat when you can recognize, like in the environment that we sit in, everything around is either given back to us or taken away from us, right? And nutrition can be the same way. Thoughts can be the same way. Emotions can be the same way. So you start that really kind of extrapolated, expanded things. It's like I came back to the mind body again, and I brought it into the body with a nutritional focus. So that exploded within my practice, did really well. And then from there, I ended up selling my practice. It was after 5 years. Yeah, local compounder came in. They really couldn't make a dent. So I was kind of getting tired of being there all the time. So we kind of came together for a bit. And then I kind of developed, so I wasn't doing the one-on-one as much. Then I developed a point and shoot practice. So another thing that we can do that I think is great, we don't have to sit down for an intensive hour-long consult with people. We can, and that's great. But what's ever so, I think, incredible is when someone can come up to you, you can be their advocate, you can listen to them, you can justify their concerns, and then you can help confirm or make a recommendation within 5 or 10 minutes. to get them on their way in a healthy way. Then they can come back to you. So there's so many different ways we can incorporate a nutritional practice, a wellness practice, whether it's one-on-one, I like to call point and shoot, but it all services the patients. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think pharmacists are a perfect example of a person who has that 5 or 10 minutes. I mean, assuming they're
Yeah.
not swamped with immunization and documentation and all that stuff, which they usually are in chains. But
Yep.
if you do have a few minutes in a smaller pharmacy or in a setting where maybe you have those few minutes,
Yep.
um, even in herbal shops, I have interned and I work at an herb shop. So we kind of do the
Hmm.
same thing as pharmacists, where we listen to a person and we recommend an herb, or we, and a pharmacy can recommend a supplement or talk to them briefly about their medication, and
Yep.
just counsel them. So all part of that counseling, right? And you could talk to them about nutrition or lifestyle while you're counseling them on their medication.
Yep, absolutely. And that's the thing. I think that's important. I think there's a couple key areas that we like to hit. I will talk to them, quick things, okay, tell me about your exercise, tell me about your diet, tell me about your relaxation strategies. And I always thought that I'm not stressed. I don't have any stress in my life. you know so just from these like 4 or 5 core talking points. What medications are you on? Oh, you're on that statin. Well, let's talk about CoQ10. Or you're on all those cardio drugs that can maybe be pulling out magnesium or whatever it might be. So we can do a lot in just a little bit of time, which is nice. And oftentimes for the practice that also has a one-on-one, that's the gateway that gets people in. It's like, I can spend 5 or 10 minutes with you, but if you'd really like to sit down, we can also do that.
Right. So how do your sit downs look like? Which of your practices do you incorporate? Does it always look like the same kind of structure, or do you cater it to the person? Do you use Reiki or kinesiology, or what do you employ?
Sure. Well, I haven't been doing the kinesiology for a number of years, nor the Reiki. So, especially as in this era of onlineness from COVID and all that stuff, everything, I'll meet with people now at a local cafe and stuff like that, or we'll go on Zoom, right? So that's essentially what it looks like. And I do like to incorporate everything, all the lifestyle. So I'm definitely a food first approach. I need to know what needs to be removed. And I think it's a removal before even adding in. People have to understand the challenges of their diet and what's leading to where they are. And then we'll talk about the movement, we'll talk about the stress management, and then we'll talk about the other lifestyle issues, such as, okay, what are you doing to fill your creativity? A lot of times we get into a talk of just what's purpose here, you know? I had a recent consult the other day. We just met at a cafe, and one of the main topics was years of anxiety and some antidepressants off those. And it was essentially it was a female who cared for 4 children, and kind of, did the housewife thing and raising children, which is quite noble. And it gave back to her, but she never really also did that thing for herself. And that's where the conversation went. So where she was like, can you help refine my supplements? It's like, kind of went into, no, let's refine my life and my path. So
Yeah, I think it's always like that. Like somebody may come for a specific problem, but then you discover like a bigger root cause for that problem. Why it's
exactly,
coming up in the first place?
that's exactly it.
So how do you assess for nutrient depletions and things like that on a consult, especially if it's, long distance?
Sure. A lot of times it's from a dietary assessment and nutritional assessment. So I don't do a lot of testing, honestly, especially the first time out of the box. If we are talking about application of hormones, yes, we're going to be testing. We're going to go in those directions. But I'm not a big, I shouldn't say a big tester because I'm not a big tester, and I don't want to put a negative light on testing. Let's see. You there? Sorry about
Good, we're
that.
good.
Although I think a lot of really things have to start from the ground, the basics. So we can get into that, but I don't really do any functional testing and nutritional depletions, to be honest with you. If I work with some other, I just don't like my practice to be modeled that way. If I work with other functional practitioners and stuff like that, we can get the patient in that direction if need be. I'm meeting with someone actually she's been an old client of mine for a long time. She sees a functional medicine practitioner. So they test her to the nth degree, which is wonderful. Then I come in to talk to her. Okay, well, let's see how we can modify this. And then we have a nice communication going back and forth. So,
Nice.
yeah.
How did you gather the research for your drug-induced nutrient depletions that you share with your patients?
Yeah, well, a lot of it came from the Drug-Induced Nutrient Depletion Handbook. There was one that was, and then there was a Pharmacist Guide. So both of these were created by Jim Lavelle, Ross Pelton, Ernie, I forget his last name, a couple others. So there was two books. I think they're both out of print. So that was the inception of it. But then, Google Scholar and PubMed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I had
they fill in the holes.
on the show too.
Oh, did you?
Yeah,
Great. Awesome.
great.
Yeah. Love Ross.
Yeah. So, okay, what else do you do in terms of, by the way, for the testing, I completely agree with you. I think there's a lot of baseline things and just symptom assessments that can go a long way before you feel the need to go deeper with the testing. Sometimes there's a need for it, and then that's when you do it.
Yeah, because sometimes we might do the test and start adding before we even say, well, what's draining it?
Yeah.
So let's stop and take a breath and look there. And, there's a reality of pill fatigue, and people get overwhelmed and it can be quite expensive too. So where we have this need, and, I think that brings up another thing. A lot of times in the functional practice of realm, people get on nutrients, but then they're treated like drugs.
Yep.
So there's not this revisiting of, okay, can we take this away now? What are you doing in your life to help with the stress? Do we need this? Yeah, I most of my clients are going to be walking away with some nutrition, absolutely. But I think we also have to be aware of the fact that the goal should be, okay, they're here for the here and now, most of them. Let's repair and move on, hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely. I think several things come to mind. So absolutely, I think some of the supplements and the nutrients are treated like extracts, like isolated extracts that your body's missing. So now we have to go in and, replenish those things that you're missing. Just like what drugs do, they repair a mechanism that's broken, they replenish something that's not there. But then we're missing that whole food piece and the whole spectrum that plants have to really offer us and how they work together synergistically. And we haven't researched it, and I don't think it's possible to research how it all works synergistically. We just can look at how it's traditionally been used, and the safety profile is different too, of whole plants versus extracts. So we really have to know what we're doing, or we can just use the more whole herb and whole food approach in order to kind of really be well-rounded.
That says so much. And I think probably a perfect example for that would be iodine. So I'm a big fan of iodine, and I think a lot of people in our society, culture are depleted, right? But when you look about it, you can get something like a high dose where people are getting 50, milligrams a day, which is way hyperphysiologic. They might need it, but that often shouldn't come from a general point and shoot approach. That should have to do with some testing that's involved in it for sure. When a general plant-based, if we can get about a milligram a day, right, of iodine, that comes from like what people in Asia are consuming through their seafood. And yeah, so I think that's a great point you just made.
Yeah, sea vegetables, seaweed. I think like start low, go slow approach also is good. Whereas if you get an extract, and it could really just go high dose from the beginning, and then it's hard to tell what's going on. And with the iodine, you have that risk of getting a goiter, whether you're hypo or hyper. So it's, that's something you really have to be careful with too.
Yeah.
So how do your visits generally look in terms of each visit? Does each visit focus on an area, or is it just all the areas constantly being revisited?
Well, a lot of times I like to look at what the chief complaints are. So I'm going to look at them, and then I want to see how that applies to the whole body. Then I'm going to see within usually that first 30 minutes where that conversation is going to take us, what we've learned off the health history. Then we're going to target in on and say, one or two main things to focus in on and maybe add some ancillary things there. But I think the idea is, why are they coming to me? I want to make sure I get them feeling better right away. And at the same time, let's see if there's anything we're missing to get to that root as well.
Yeah, awesome. And how long do clients generally work with you? Is it ongoing refinement, or do you tend to see results within some certain period of time or magic number of appointments?
Yeah, no, a lot of times you can see results right out of the box, and it really just depends what they want to do. So I've got a general program that people can go through. That's kind of like a 90-day thing where we have continued visits. Or hey, if they just want to go one off, and we can see how that goes, and then we'll reach out. And oftentimes they'll come back for one more, a follow up, or they like that program. It's like, okay, we just settled down on that. Now let's get to this level. So it's individualized for the patients with a general structure of what I have to offer.
Yeah. No,
But as I said, the point and shoots, they can just go where people are like, all right, that's great. I'll come back for 5 minutes next month.
yeah. Yeah, you get to serve a lot more people just on a more surface level
Hmm.
yeah, area.
Yeah.
All right. So I know you also have a program for other pharmacists or practitioners that want to kind of learn the modalities that you use. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I teach CEs on functional medicine, have been for many years, through two different outfits. The one is freece.com, part of PharmCon. So what I created with them and reached out was functional. Basically, it's called the Integrative Pharmacist Specialist Certification course. So it is CE modules. So the first module is based the lifestyle element. So we talk about diet, lifestyle diet, look at Mediterranean, look at the blue zones, and all these things. Look at primal and paleo, mostly indigenous things. And then we talk about stress management. We talk about movement, exercise, the generalities of it, drug-induced nutrient depletions, and then how you can kind of incorporate nutritional medicine into allopathic medicine. So that's level one. Now, level two, we just came out, which I call core metabolism, meaning our metabolism is basically sustaining all life forces within us. So it's not just about weight loss, although we cover modules to really dive in to get into questions and answers, how we can really, some protocols, how we can really help our patients, everything from thyroid, all endocrine areas, insulin, testosterone, progesterone, estrogen. So that's, so that is that area. Now we're creating level three, which is going to delve further into immunity, inflammation, cardiovascular, and that whole realm there. So it's been a really neat process, and it's been taken by thousands and thousands of pharmacists now, and I get great results. So it's very neat for me. It's very cool to see after all these years. When I started teaching these, I had more hecklers on board, like that's not a gold study standard or whatever. But there's this greater acceptance now. And I think it's one out of belief, and it's two out of pharmacists really want to help people in an integrative way. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So do you think that pharmacists are using this in their point and shoot kind of mini consult practice, or do they use it in building out their own practices as well?
It's both. It's both. And what? One thing that I love to hear is when I teach these CEs is when they say, I'm implementing this in my practice and in my own life. And I think the biggest thing that we can do is walk the walk and talk the talk. And when we can practice it with ourselves and our family, it's so much better the way we can deliver it to our patients. So, but now I'm seeing them doing it in both ways. And it just depends their setting. A lot of them want to get off in the way of like, okay, I can still do my 40 hours, my 30 hours as a pharmacist, but then I can start my own health coaching practice and start working with people that way.
Yeah.
So
So the first one you said is offered through freece.com, and then what about the other two levels?
same. So level two was just released last month, and level three, hopefully after the first of the year, we should have that out.
And how long is
So
each training?
they're about 6 hours, about 5 to 7 hours of two of them right now. The third is probably going to be dialing in around that. I never know till I'm complete, because when you start putting these together, it's like, oh wait, no, that's and that. So, and in the meantime, I create other functional CEs to kind of help plug the holes, right? And we're actually, and I'm getting ready to release Functional Pharmacy University, which is essentially connecting the dots. So we've got these hubs of learning, but now this is going to be that we need to keep the conversation going. So this is going to be basically filling in between. So it's kind of a regular monthly continuity. So that should be released within the coming weeks as well.
Wow,
So
amazing.
it's to complement all that. Yeah.
Yeah. And is that going to be through another platform?
That's going to be through my platform on functionalpharmacy.com.
Cool. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exciting
Yeah.
stuff.
Neat stuff. Fun stuff.
What did I want to ask you about the functional credits? Let me see. So they're probably home study courses, right?
Yeah. So the one that goes live, like right now, like someone can get on and it's all home study for level 1. For level 2, being that's the new live one, the first one is a live
Oh,
CE that you get on, and then the rest is home study. Yeah.
okay. And I know the kind of like the big emerging field of study in anti-aging and chronic fatigue is the mitochondria. So is that
Mhm.
something that's covered in your courses or maybe will be in the future?
Yeah, no, we're going to be hitting that in level 3, but that's also the reason why I started to put in this functional pharmacy university, so I could put a training on mitochondrial dysfunction that maybe wouldn't make it to like a big core course that hits like, the 80-90% of our pharmacist population, but dials into those smaller areas. Yeah, that's a
Awesome.
great question. Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
yeah.
Well, I can't wait to personally go and check that out. I have a free CE account, so I'm going to be checking
Awesome.
it out for sure. And it's like two birds with one stone of keeping up with your CEs and
Yeah,
learning some functional medicine. Yeah. So, do you have like a couple more minutes for our rapid fire questions?
sure.
All right. So number one is, what's your number one recommendation for somebody to improve their quality of life right now?
Get outside.
Nice.
Get outside.
Okay. That's
Go
easy.
for a walk.
It's not easy to do all the time, but definitely.
No, or bring the outside in. Like for instance, sometimes if you live in a city area or something like that, you might walk out and you just have these big buildings that are blocking the sun, and it might not be that for you, but it's still getting outside. But I think it's also good to bring green in. So let's bring the plants and let's just get back to nature.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great
Yeah,
point. Yeah. So
yeah,
even if the outside is not always accessible, like you don't have a balcony or a front porch or a backyard, you could still go to a park or you can bring some plants indoors.
yep. Pictures of that. Oh, one more thing too. Recognize rhythms. We are rhythmic beings, and I believe there's so much power in recognizing ultradian rhythms. We've got our circadian rhythms that are day to night, night to day. We've got these mini ultradian rhythms that go through the day, which essentially says we can work hard and strong and focused for like an hour, hour and a half, but we need to disconnect 10 or 15 minutes, and that'll just give us so much more back. End of the day, we'll get more done, feel more rested, and more ready to engage with our family and our loved ones. So that's the other quick one.
I love that. So like
Yeah,
tapping into the high power structure, but then giving yourself little breaks to
got
kind
to
of
disconnect.
like the HIIT behind it.
Yeah, just the opposite of it. Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, that works for your body and that also works for productivity and
It's
things
a
like
great point. Yep.
that. All right. Number two, what is your favorite pastime or hobby?
My favorite hobby is either hiking or skateboarding. So
Skateboarding.
yeah, I've got I mean, I used to do the bowls and stuff like that, but I just got, a long board with a land paddle. So I just like to get out. I'm about a mile from the beach here on Lake Michigan. So one of the biggest things I just do is hop on and just go for a skate.
Awesome. Wow.
Yeah.
All right. And then number three, what's your favorite beverage?
My favorite beverage. I've been really hooked on kombucha lately, but it comes down to it. It's water.
Yeah.
I just like water with a little bit of lemon and some sea salt. I think that's perfect.
What
Yeah.
do you have in your cup there?
Well, this is coffee. Might not be my favorite. It's my
Second
necessity,
favorite.
though.
So good. Yeah, I have an herbal tea going here.
Oh, nice, nice.
Yeah. All right. Well, Robert, I had so much fun. Why don't you tell
So
our
did I.
listeners where they can find you, connect with you, get that free nutrient depletion chart and
Yeah,
your new courses?
sure, absolutely. Thanks. So you can find me on my website, which is functionalpharmacy.com. And right there, you see you can download a free drug-induced nutrient depletion chart. Socially, Instagram, Rob Kress, FRX, as in functional RX Pharmacy. That's Instagram. It's also Facebook. And so freece.com. And if you go up to the learning area, the learning tab, that'll actually show the integrative pharmacy specialist training. So yeah, so that's where you can find me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. Yeah, I think me and you met on LinkedIn, so you can be found there as well.
Oh yeah, LinkedIn too. Thank you.
No problem.
I think it's Rob Kress FRX too. Yeah.
I'll have that in the show notes so people can just link up with you. And yeah, so thank you so much for spending the morning chatting with me, and hopefully we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Great to meet you, and thanks for having me on.
You too. Take care now.
Have a great one. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Raw Fork podcast, and I truly hope that you enjoyed it and learned something from it. If you did enjoy it, please don't hesitate to leave us a 5-star rating and a short, sweet review so that other listeners can find us across podcast platforms. To get in touch with me, you can go to rawfork.com or email me directly at marina@rawfork.com. Thank you, and I hope to see you back here next week.